Do I remember Remy? Let me tell you something. Everyone remembers Remy. Remy Warren. He was one of the bus drivers at Old Glenville Elementary School. It's the elementary school I went to. It's the elementary school I had always planned on my kids going to as well. That's how my town felt to the people who were raised here, as a place that didn't make you feel trapped or stuck. There was like a warm glow to my town that just felt cozy. I mean, why would you ever want to leave a place like that? Old Glenville will always be my home, or so I thought. And then Remy Warren happened. It was the second to last day of school year. There was the fervor of summer right around the corner. All the kids were so excited. One more day. That's all anyone was thinking about. And not just the kids, but also the teachers. The teachers were probably more excited than the kids, because it meant they could finally take a break, a real break. That was the ultimate teacher's perk. Summer. My kids were 5 and 2 at the time. My oldest, Hank, had just finished his last day of preschool. Next year, he would be heading to Old Glenville Elementary. My youngest, Jalen, had just finished his last day of daycare. It was going to be me, the kids, and my wife for the next couple months until school started up again. My wife and I had always been dreading that moment. The moment when one of your kids is too old for home, so you send them out to school. Now, if you're a parent, you know how tough that moment can be. Because you can feel time just slipping right out of your fingertips. You can picture the moment in your head, right? When that bus picks them up, they're no longer yours. They become their own person. You can feel a piece of yourself being taken away. Now, seeing as how I had grown up in Old Glenville, I had plenty of friends who were still around. Friends with children in the elementary school. One friend in particular, Mitch. I had met him in that very school. 35 years later, and we're still friends. Ain't that something? We were still here with our own families, and now our families had become friends. Mitch had asked me to be the godfather for his first child. I mean, how do you say no to that? And once you get through making the obligatory godfather jokes and quotes, you recognize the responsibility of what it means. Being asked to watch over the children if, God forbid, something happens to the parents. You never think anything would actually happen to the parents. And you for damn sure never ever think something would happen to the children. Not here. Not in Old Glenville. But it did. Thanks to Remy Warren. I had seen Mitch the night before. He had come over to hang out to watch a Blazers game, and they lost at the last second. Go figure. We had planned to get the family together that Sunday. It was going to be nice out, so we thought a beach trip was in order. The wives had everything in place. All me and Mitch had to do was get the kids in the car and carry the bags. I was at work when my wife called me. The hours of being a lawyer can be all over the map, even more so when you work in real estate law. I just made my second cup of coffee. I remember this. Second cup of coffee, phone rang. My only response was, "What?" As my wife explained it, it was like her words seemed to lose shape, as if they were being ripped apart, one letter at a time. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't. There were 5 bus drivers at Old Glenville Elementary, one for every grade. Not that they split it up that way. It was just a correct amount to cover the town map. If your kid took the bus home, as a parent, you feel obligated to introduce yourself to the driver at some point. And most did. Because my kids weren't old enough yet, I had no idea who Remy Warren was. The only time I'd ever been there that year was for the soccer games to watch Mitch's kid play. And let me tell you something, it was great. All the parents were so supportive. There was no yelling, no fighting. Everyone was on their ultimate best behavior. And let me tell you, we took pride in that. We were setting an example for the world. My wife could barely get the words out. The part that explained what actually happened. She was already bawling. And I'm standing at my desk. I thought the worst. I thought it was the kids, our kids. She said, our kids are fine. Babe, our kids are fine. She said it twice. I was sweating. Like, that feeling, that cold feeling that just runs down your spine? That was me. My heart was racing so fast, I couldn't even feel my hands. It's the other kids. The other kids. She said that twice too. 15 years together, I had never heard my wife like this before. What other kids? What happened? I told her, take a breath, tell me what's going on. She finally did. I couldn't believe it. Not then, not ever. All the parents who had been waiting to greet their children once they got home were confused when the bus didn't show up on time. A couple of minutes late here and there, it happens. But it had been nearly a half hour. Nobody who goes to Old Glenville Elementary School lives more than a half hour away. It's impossible. Parents got nervous. They would run inside to check their answering machine and then keep their eyes glued out of their living room windows to hopefully see their children pull up outside. 45 minutes later, still no bus. Anxiety started taking over all the parents. They started flooding the school phone line with calls. The school had no reason to believe something happened. The drivers were instructed to call in case of an emergency. To the mind of every parent with a child on Remy Warren's bus, wrong answer. Multiple cop cars began zooming along the school bus routes, trying to see if they could find a bus broken down somewhere along the road. Nothing. Not a trace anywhere. More cops were called in and told to spread out, cover as much ground as possible in a short amount of time as possible. One of the missing children belonged to a local police officer. So, after about 90 minutes of the bus being MIA, entire precinct dropped whatever was on their plate, joined forces to find this man's kid. Word spread like wildfire. The bus was quickly deemed missing. There wasn't a single person in Old Glenville that wasn't aware of this story by the time hour number 3 started. Your mind goes to dark places in moments like this. For some messed up reason, you're programmed to think the worst. Just like when my wife called me and told me the news, I'm thinking, is our child, our children who are missing. But no one would have ever imagined that the truth could be even worse than your darkest fear. So there was roughly 20 kids per bus, including the bus that Remy drove. Now, about halfway through his route after dropping off 12 of the 20 kids, rather than do what he had always done, which was to make a left onto Chestnut Street, he made a right onto Brook River Road. Now, at the end of Brook River is a dead end. See, it used to belong to a bread factory that had become dormant about 10 years ago when the factory went out of business and many people lost their jobs. People including Remy Warren. The town had been planning to bring a new business in that very location, but the property remained vacant. They couldn't sell it. They couldn't find a new buyer. So it just became a dead end. Beyond the dead end is a creek. The fall from Brook River Road into the creek is about, give or take, 75 feet. For reasons that will never be understood, Remy Warren decided to drive his bus filled with 8 children straight off the dead end into the creek. children. 8. 8 children had taken their last breath before Remy Warren made that final stop. In a town as small as Old Glenville, those children had footsteps everywhere. The story went national quickly. What would have motivated this man to do something so heinous? Everyone wanted answers. He had one living relative, his aunt, whose basement he was living in. His aunt said he mostly kept to himself. He never made any trouble in the house. Don't you find that funny? Every time somebody does some heinous nonsense, it's always, they were so quiet. I would never expect that from them. They always kept to themselves. Like nobody knows that this person was a ticking time bomb. He was a very quiet boy, became a very quiet man. Not many friends, or any friends for that matter. But that angle wasn't good enough for the parents who had just lost a child, including Mitch. They went after the school. Why hadn't a more comprehensive background check been done on this man? The school said they had run a background check on him, just as they do with every new potential hire. They had the same intel as everyone else, which is that after dropping out of the military, Remy Warren went to go work at the bread factory until it closed, and then he became a bus driver to earn part-time money. Get this, it wasn't until his obituary came out and I saw his age that I realized Remy had been in the same graduating class as Mitch and me. We didn't recognize his name or his face, and now we would never forget it. After the tragedy, standing on my front lawn, waiting for the school bus to come pick up my oldest boy, Hank, my feet can't stop tapping against the long grass. I am a nervous wreck. The whole town is. And this is the first day of school for Old Glenville Elementary since that day. I mean, let's be real. There's no right way to carry on from something like that. The town did the cliche of holding a vigil for the lost children. Someone created a marathon that was made for their memory. It's called an 8K. If you ask me, it felt a bit hollow, unnecessary. I mean, I get it. Their intentions were good, but nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody knew the correct way to console the parents, or the siblings of the children for that matter. No one had any idea how to process it. Myself, I tried focusing on work as a distraction, but doing that created this knot of guilt in my stomach anytime I thought of Mitch. You know, we would go over to his house once per week, and he barely spoke. About a month after, Hank made him a drawing that was of him and his daughter, and Mitch lost it. I never heard a grown man cry like that, let alone Mitch crying like that. It sounded as if his tears were like acid, and they were turning his heart into ash. It wasn't until I saw the school bus around the corner of our street that I told Hank that I would drive him to school instead. He seemed disappointed. You know, kids don't like change. Some of them, at least, they get scared, you know, preferring what they know. Not my boy. For barely 6 years old, Hank had a grown man mindset. He relished doing new things. I don't know where he gets that from. Definitely his mother. I know it's not me. Either way, I told him he'd be able to ride the bus tomorrow. But today was a drive with Dad. My wife reminded me that the school and the local authorities had conducted intense, comprehensive background checks on all of the bus drivers, including the one picking up Hank. Her name was Millie. She'd been a part-time school bus driver for nearly 15 years. She'd been doing it ever since her husband passed away, and she needed some extra income. That's what happens in the aftermath of the unthinkable. You start learning your neighbors' names. It's almost like you want to keep tabs on them, so to speak. Driving Hank to school was like an avalanche of relief. We got there in 7 minutes. School's close enough for Hank to walk, but he's too young for that now. Maybe fifth grade, but that seemed like a century from now. My little guy being able to walk to school. I pulled up towards a crosswalk just outside the main entrance. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this is not how I expected to feel on his first day. I was expecting to be filled with excitement and sadness, having to pass him on to someone else. Instead, I just felt dread. This unbreakable trust that I always felt within the school system has suddenly been broken. This is supposed to be a safe place, the safest of places, the place that served as a beacon of hope for when all else fails. And yet here I was, side-eyeing the retired cop who would help out in the mornings. His name was Ronnie. He'd come to school in the morning and the afternoon to help sort out the traffic. Now, everyone knew Ronnie. He was an old school, gregarious guy who loved this barely part-time gig. It was a way for him to stay involved in the community. And more importantly, if you ask him, he'd tell you it was an opportunity to let his wife have the house to herself for an hour. I knew Ronnie. I've known Ronnie my entire life. He was the assistant coach on the high school football team. Ronnie was about as trustworthy a guy as we had in our town. But today, nah, bro. Your past wasn't good enough. I felt like paranoia was infesting my skin. That deep, dark fear was now bubbling back to the surface. What if Ronnie had been harvesting sinister thoughts ever since he retired from being a cop? You would never think Ronnie could hurt a kid, but that was the same thing they said about Remy Warren. The few people who did know him, that is. Most people didn't, including myself. But those who did said they were shocked he could have ever done something like that. Never in a million years. That's what his aunt said about him. Never in a million years. Now, I know I might sound a bit crazy here, but I went out and did some of my own personal background on that aunt. Yes, I had to. It was the only way for me to feel like I was helping Mitch. Turns out, she was a bit of a religious zealot back in the day. See, back in the mid-1960s, there was a Church of Satan in San Francisco. When they raided her house to see if they could find any motivation for how Remy could have done this, they found these drawings, portraits more accurately, of a man named Anton LaVey. He's the freak show who founded the Church of Satan. When asked why would she have these portraits of him in her attic, Remy's aunt said, to remind me who I'm up against. Not exactly the most reassuring answer, I know. About 6 weeks later, someone tried to burn down the aunt's house, with her inside it. Forensics said the only reason she survived was because she had been such an intense hoarder. The old stacks of artifacts and memorabilia had served as protective wall from the flames. She was able to crawl out of her basement window before the smoke suffocated her lungs. After that, Remy's aunt was never seen again. Did some spying on her, and this may sound a bit off, but I kind of felt bad for her. Here's this innocent person getting caught up in the crossfire for what her sick nephew did. She didn't deserve that. Local news had to make a very tough decision. Do they broadcast from the school on opening day? They knew this would be on everyone's mind. But are they being exploitative? One of the people in charge of this decision was my wife. She was a field producer. Ultimately, they decided that they would film during the afternoon as school was getting out. See, they reasoned that this would just heighten the safety of the children, to sharpen the magnifying glass of security as these innocent children boarded their buses to be driven home. That made sense. If you see these kids getting on this bus and we see the driver, they know we're watching them. Nobody was smarter than my wife. She came up with that. I know she did. But still, I couldn't stop that feeling of paranoia in my gut. It was only growing and gnawing at my insides. The insides that used to be filled with hope. all day. Anyone I came into contact with seemed suspect. The barista I got my coffee from, the gas station attendant who filled my tank, the office mail clerk who delivered my check. This guy who delivered my check every 2 weeks. Now all of a sudden I'm looking at him like, what are you doing? You know, asking myself, how much do I know about these men? Were they happy? Had they been harboring something sinister inside? What were they capable of? Would they too not do something never in a million years? Had they had an aunt that once attended the Church of Satan in San Francisco? I don't know. That was all the stuff that was just gnawing away at my soul. So I find myself sitting on the bench during my lunch break. Now, normally, I would be enjoying my salad. Today, I was looking through my old high school yearbook, trying to see which kids that I graduated with that might be lunatics. That's when it started to click. See, I never knew Remy. No one knew Remy. He had gone through his entire life an invisible man. Only in death did he gain a name. Was this his revenge? You know, Mitch had been in his graduating class, so had Stan and Catherine, two of the parents who lost a child that day. I called my boss and I told him I need to take the rest of the day off. You know, Hank's first day, I want to pick him up. You get it, blah, 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 sentimental stuff. He got it. My boss, I laid on the sentimentality pretty thick, knowing that he once had little kids who have known to be adults. He could not hold a grudge against me for calling out this afternoon. Plus, he knew I'd make it up in time for him tomorrow in spades. Today was not about real estate law. Far from it. I went to the local library and started piecing everything together. I felt like I was back in law school. You know, when you have half the conference table all to yourself, trying to make sense of this gigantic puzzle you have laid out in front of you. And I found the thread. Matheson High School. See, all the parents who lost children that day went to Matheson High School. Just like Mitch, just like me, Stan, Catherine, Matheson High School. And I thought to myself, was Remy getting revenge? Now, at first, it seemed too obvious, right? Remy dropped off 12 children. Those 12 children belonged to parents who did not go to Matheson High. He spared them. I know, tough to use the word spare in association with a monster, but that seems to be the case. Had this case been solved? Had I just found the motive? If so, so what, right? Would that bring peace to any of the parents? To Mitch? Not likely. It'd only somehow make them feel guiltier for their children's death being associated with the family name. But I needed to do something with this information. I couldn't just sit on it. So I took some time, mustered up the courage, and I called Ronnie. I know he would love nothing more than to feel relevant again. It's why he spent his weekday mornings being a crossing guard. He wanted to be useful. So I met him at Davies, this local dive bar. And let me tell you, Ronnie was impressed with the amount of work I had done in such a quick time. And he had the same reaction as me. It just seems too obvious to be true. But how had this not been documented already? I asked Ronnie if any of the school bus drivers had any associations with Matheson High. Was there someone he could call to find out? He said he was way ahead of me. All the guys downtown were. The first thing they did was a full comprehensive background check on all drivers. I told him I was aware of these checks. But these same people seem to have overlooked Remy's own history. So how much trust can I have in them? He looked at me. I could see his demeanor change, and he said, ease up just a bit. Ronnie could see I was reeling at that moment. I took a deep breath, and he said, I'll be a mermaid living in the Pacific Ocean before any of my kids get harmed. You have my word. Please believe me. I wanted Ronnie's words to be an elixir, something to wash away the fear and anguish I had been feeling all day as my firstborn was at his first day of school. I checked my watch. It was 2:37. In 23 minutes, I was supposed to be outside the school giving Hank a ride home. Ronnie was supposed to be there too. We hightailed it out of there and ended up standing neck to neck exactly at 3:03 as all the kids started spilling out of school. I could see my wife helping set up the remote crew just beyond the parking lot. They weren't the only news station with a live camera, I'll tell you that. There were also multiple cop cars stationed at the entry and exit points. I saw Hank running out of his classroom. That boy was beaming. All the kids were. How beautiful is it to be completely naive? I bent down and scooped him up. He told me all about his day. I piggybacked him over towards his mom. He told her verbatim what he had just told me. And for those 7 minutes, I felt like I was in heaven, listening to my boy proclaim this to be a great day filled with hope, wonder, and excitement about what was to come that day and every day forward. But it wasn't until I was lying in bed that night when reality just punched me right in the face. Tomorrow I would be standing on my lawn again, holding my boy's hand, waiting for that school bus to show up and take him to old Glenville Elementary School. I was trying to make this decision now so I wouldn't have to do it tomorrow. Would I be able to let go of my boy's hand? See, thinking and doing are two radically different things. How long had Remy Warren thought about doing what he did? I would have to eventually. You can't hold your child's hands for their whole life. You have to let them go out there and scrape their knees and learn the hard way in some things, you know? So here I am, 7:33 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, standing on my lawn, holding my boy's hand, waiting. He's squeezing my fingers so tight, and then we see it, rounding the corner, the school bus, coming right for us. Then he asked me, "Did you want to take me again, Dad? It's okay if you do. I can ride the bus tomorrow." That's not how it's supposed to happen. The son is not supposed to make the dad feel like everything's going to be okay. But in that moment, he does. So I smile and let go. Hank smiles too. You could see he said his smile said thank you. Then he runs off into the school bus. As it drives away, he waves to me from the window. I wave to him right back, holding my tears until he's out of sight. Because I'd hate to ruin his moment, which is what this is, his moment. And the bus continues down the road. After about 20 seconds, it's gone. And then I see him, Mitch, sitting on a bench for the bus, the local Glenville line bus. It was such an odd sight because Mitch had never taken the bus before. Mitch had a car. His wife had a car. There was no reason ever for either one of them to take a bus. But then I thought about Remy. Not as a man, not as a grown man who committed the biggest atrocity in the history of our town, but I thought about Remy as a child. I thought of how at one time he was just a little boy too, looking at the world with hope, wonder, anticipation. And somewhere along the way, the light went out and it got dark. You know, maybe Remy didn't have a hand to hold when he waited for the bus. Maybe he didn't have someone to sit next to when he got on the bus. Maybe these are the things he thought about every time he dropped those kids off. You know, some people say it takes a village to raise a child. Those same people might say it takes a village to destroy a child. As a parent, I tell myself that I'm immune from such horror. That those are the kind of tragedies that only happen in other people's movies. But my movie? Hell no. The movie starring me, my wife, and our two boys? No. That movie ends with a happy ending. This is what I tell myself. It's what you have to tell yourself. But there was something about the way he was sitting on that bench. We locked eyes. I waved and smiled. But it was almost as if he didn't see me. He just seemed hollow, figments of a memory that had faded away into something else. He turned away from me and stood up, beginning to walk in the opposite direction. I'm sitting there, I'm just thinking to myself, like, where was Mitch going? More importantly, had Mitch become someone else?
Through the sacred clouds we see light's embrace, it guides us free, a journey to eternity where souls unite in harmony. Hand in hand we find our peace in the warmth of heaven